In this exercise, we're going to be creating 4 different hello worlds using 4 different technologies that are available in Java 2 EE. So for that purpose, we're going to then switch to IntelliJ. And in IntelliJ, if we are available there, where's IntelliJ? We're going to create a new project. We're going to file, new project, and then we're going to select Maven, and we're going to create from archetype. And one of the archetypes that we're going to use is the web app archetype. It's built in, so it's going to be the Maven archetype web app. If you remember, an archetype is just a template for generating your stuff. So we're going to call it with a domain name, and then we are going to call the project Hello World JavaEE. And we're going to create a new window, and it's going to create everything. It's going to create their entire structure. And okay, now that we have our super cool structure, we are going to see that there's already a hello world using JSP, which, you know, that's simple, but what we gotta do is that we gotta edit our POM to define the dependencies that we want to have. So the very basic thing that we need is that we are going to need a plugin for execution, which we're going to, in the last step here, I'm going to add one plugin, which is org.apache.tomcat.maven, and say that I want to run Apache Tomcat version 2.2, and the path where my URLs are going to start is test, and to update it when it's true. So essentially, I want to be able to see my JSP. That's the first thing, the setup. So if I go into add configuration, I'm going to click on the plus sign and I'm going to select Maven because I want to execute a Maven command. So in Maven, I'm going to do tomcat 7:run. And if I click this guy now, because I'm going to run tomcat 7 run, it essentially started tomcat 7 with a URL that it's going to be listening on port 8080, and it's this test. So if I now go into my web browser and put that URL, localhost 8080, we get a famous hello world. But since we're going to be doing it 4 times, I'm going to rebrand this and say that it's going to be via JSP. So in our project, after the setup, I'm skipping a little bit just to explain things so that we're not wasting time typing the same thing over and over and over again. I have my Java directory with my package that right now it's holding a JAX thing. The first class to analyze is Hello World. You can actually download the source code from the link in the video. And in the Hello World servlet, it's just going to reply with the response, set the context to HTML, get something to write extra stuff into the output, and essentially put a date into it. So if we run this process, which is our setup, then and one extra thing about servlets, when they're written like this, in the web XML, you have to map the servlet that it's going to be reading and where is the URL where it's going to be serving it from. URL where things are mapped, and if we run it, we can then point to our localhost test, and because we're mapping it to this URL, it's going to resolve to this class, which essentially is this thing. So it seems a little bit convoluted to do it this way, because you have to be displaying, first of all, for each damn page that you're writing a servlet, which means it's hyper complicated. And bear with me with this, because I'm trying to show you how simpler things become as things progress. Also, side note about this. This is why Python and Python, Django, and Ruby on Rails have become really popular, because they simplify the process of web development dramatically from Java, who was the king at the time. Anyway, you can see here how the HTML is written by each one of the processes. I mean, it's written like line by line by line, so it wouldn't be like really friendly to write a really complicated page. And then you have then to go ahead and map the URL via each servlet. So it's a little bit of a pain in the neck. Second method is to have a servlet which you have an annotation that says which path it's going to go. So if we use that address, it's going to have Hello World Servlet Part 2, which is essentially Hello Servlet World Servlet Part 2, and the date and time is just to demonstrate that we are rendering something live. So that makes it a little bit simpler, because you don't need to put anything on web XML about Hello 2. Still, you have to write every single damn part of the page by hand, which is where JSP becomes a little bit more desirable, because this looks like an HTML page, yet you know, you can write certain templating and including files and things like that, which makes it a little bit more visible, but it's very back-end driven. You have to put like all the back-end and then the front end, which takes us to JSF. So for JSF, we have to set up our faces config file. And our faces config file is just going to tell us where the beans are. And we go into the slide thing. And also we're going to have to put certain dependencies. And just to point out certain things, I am adding the dependencies of the JavaEE API, the faces API, and these two are specifically for Java faces. This is for essentially anything servlet related and JSP. So this is for JSF, this is JavaEE. Okay, so that's our POM, which is just grabbing dependencies and bringing them to the project. In our configuration of the project itself, we essentially are saying that anything inside of the directory's faces to be scanned by a faces servlet that it's built in, and it's going to then going to just configure whatever that value is, which is essentially saying, okay, it's got to do with these two beans. So anything also on the web XML, if we look for, has a faces star, which is here, test faces, then we can just start saying like hello.xhtml, which is going to point out to this page, which is very similar to JSF, but now has a different tagging mechanism. Not only that, there are some really cool tricks. Here is just an extra little form that is going to set the value of the controller as JC, and it's essentially I changed the value of the controller so that if the message, I added a message here as part of the hello controller, and a set message, that essentially a setter that sets a value, and if that message is empty, we get hello world via JSF and hello world via hello message via JSF. So if we load this page by saying I'm gonna do hello world via JSF, but when we click the submit button, it's essentially re-rendering the page in a dramatically fast way, where it's doing hello JC via JSF. It's essentially doing a bunch of front end. If you see, the HTML looks nothing really like what I did here, because there's a form that it's trying to pass a value and just essentially saying, oh, this is, you know, it's very encrypted, very state driven. It really, from a code base, this looks nothing like our JSF. So it's essentially, the entire point of this is just to show that I can mix front-end and back-end all in one app via JavaServer faces. Then the last thing we have for JAX, we are going to define with this class where we're going to put it, which is going to be in the path hello and slash hello slash. It's going to respond a JSON file, and it's going to call it get message, which is going to return a serialized hello world. So if we go into the web part of things, this is where the JAX part is set up. So we're going to be using another built-in servlet that is going to handle all the requests, and we can actually reuse the same servlet for like 10 pages, 100 pages or something. We don't have to write it, so that makes it simpler. And then we're telling it that in the package here, that's where the beans are going to be. It should auto-detect it, load on startup, and that everything it's going to be under /rest. So if we go into test, just like we had /faces, if we do /rest/hello, because that's where we saw it here, /rest/hello, then we get this response. If we look at the content type that we were returned, it said that it was an application JSON. For that, we needed to have in our POM the Java this dependencies, which is com.sun.jersey, and basically this is just a very simple way where you can generate the same hello world via 4 different technologies. And I hope this gave you an overview of different parts of the pyramid, where the higher you go, theoretically the simpler it is.